Hi, I'm Matty and welcome to our dive into archive again. This week we're going to talk about Victoriana. We have some really amazing bits of Victoriana in our archive which we're really lucky for, because Victoriana for the most part is very difficult to find and very expensive and didn't last very well because it's over 100 years ago. So what we've done is we've pulled out a few little bits that tell you a little bit of why the fashions at the time are what they are. And a few of the details and things of the period. So one really big thing about the Victorian style is when we talk about, like, you know, we like to think about layering up and layering up, but the reality is that the Victorians really were the kings and queens of layering up. So the shape at the time was very much a very slim, tight bodice that was always underpinned by a very severe corset. Often made out of whalebone because it added the strength. On top of that, or even underneath that, for example, we would have like this gorgeous little chemise, which again is boned, which is incredible. So this has even got boning in it. Again, you can see how delicate these items are. They're made of like a really beautiful silk. And there you go, you can see the metal bones in there. So you can imagine how uncomfortable that would be. And just the construction of everything is just so beautiful. Again, so we would have that. So we would have the chemise and then the corset and then probably something on top of that and then the dress. So they really were the kings and queens of layering. And also what's really important is that everything was so heavy. The fabrics, I mean, it was really interesting because the silks were really kind of offset with like heavy velvets and crinolines. Which are, let's see, so you see these like really heavy cloths, and what's really interesting to see about this, so this is probably kind of late Victorian, probably about 1890, coming towards the end of the decade, because obviously her reign was from like the 1830s up to 1901, so that whole era is considered Victoriana, which obviously is a huge amount of fashion. But this is really interesting, and what's really great about it is that you can see the length. So the length of the time of the Victorian era, there was a real modesty really in terms of the way people dressed. There was, you know, the kind of thing where like ladies would show an ankle and men would faint, and it was like nearly true, because you know, for the most part women never ever showed very much more than an ankle. They were very covered up, and you can see this in so much of the stuff. So here's another skirt, again, almost floor length, so you can't even see my ankles in it. So all these incredibly heavy fabrics, and obviously all the accoutrement that went with it. One thing that I really want to talk about, which is really beautiful of the time, is the laces, and we have a really amazing selection of Victorian laces here in the archive. What was really amazing about lace making back then was the fact it really was a cottage industry. So it was taught to young girls, mastered by women, and it really gave them, for a lot of people, especially for the poorer people, gave them a lot of income that they might not have ordinarily had. Now, it was quite expensive lace, so obviously it was made by poor people, sold to rich people. So quite a lot of the stuff that we've got here in our archive probably wouldn't have been worn by normal people, but this is an absolutely beautiful lace. It's got these incredible flowers in there, and the craft itself is just so stunning. So we've got that one. We've got this one. It's really beautiful. I mean, when you talk about craft and artwork, that really is an amazing lace. And the detail on it is just so beautiful and so very difficult to make. The complexity of lace making is amazing. There's a really brilliant Instagram feed called Lace Guild of New York, and you should definitely look at that because the stuff that they do is incredible, and you see how difficult it is to make that, and it's so delicate. It's kind of silk lace. And it's amazing it's really lasted this long because silk really tends to deteriorate. Really amazing thing, what's really good about some of the stuff that we have in here. So one of the things I want to talk about is colour. So for the most part, when you see pictures of Victoriana, everything is black, and there's a reason why everything is black, but for the most part, all the colours were very dour and very dark, and there's a reason for that. one of the main reasons actually is because there was a thing called there was like kind of mourning blacks, MOURNING, not mourning as in the morning. And what used to happen was kind of typically a family, if they had a death, for example, if somebody lost their husband or a child, which was quite regular in Victorian England. Because the mortality rate was quite high, they would almost take a year. They would wear black in different phases throughout the year. So quite often a woman would wear full black for an entire year, head to toe. So that's quite often why you see all those pictures that come from Victorian times or illustrations that come from Victorian times, kind of head to toe black. And we've got lots of really great examples here. This really beautiful beaded one. I mean, that's probably kind of late Victoriana, even perhaps going into 1910 perhaps. But you see how delicate that lace, the silk is. It's really stunning. Let's have a look. What else? What other beauties have we got? This is incredible. This is really beautiful. Again, this might even be kind of 10th century, but again, a really good expression of all the amazing lacework. The amazing lacework down here. Again, we kind of like, this is probably towards, this could be, it's difficult to tell, but I'd say it's probably like between 1890 and 1910, just because of the shape here. So basically as the decade progressed, as the 1800s progressed, they had a much nicer and flowing skirt line, which is very evident in that. What else have we got? Got some more mourning blacks here. So you can see this is a really amazing example when we talk about how constructed and the structure of these garments. So this would have gone over a corset, but you can see how tiny that waist is. It's absolutely minuscule. And again, you can see all the boning work, all the metal boning work in there. And also you can see what's really interesting is that this is probably early Victorian, because you can see every little stitch is hand done. So kind of mass machining came in about 1850. So you can see that the entire construction of this garment is handmade, which is just absolutely phenomenal. And what's really interesting as well is the fact that when people talk about how Victoriana may or may not have an influence on modern fashion, when you look at this top, it's really easy to see how things like this really influence things like Vivienne Westwood and shapes like that, because of this huge kind of this. In terms of what's really great is the fact you've got this amazing shape through the bodice, and then these huge voluminous sleeves that almost, seem to have been pinned kind of like almost arbitrarily. It's an incredible shape, and pinning this really beautiful flower. So that's really amazing to see. What's also great that we've got in the archive, when we're talking about not everything in the Victorian period is black. There was some around 1860, 1870. There was some really amazing synthetic dyes that came through, which gave us some really beautiful colours. There's even some pictures that you might be able to find of really vivid yellows and magentas and electric blues, and this is a really beautiful example of this kind of like purple blue. Chances are this will have been sun bleached to the end of its life pretty much, but this probably would have been a really electric blue back in the day, and sadly those colours just don't last at all, because they just disappear in light. And same again for this. So this is really beautiful. Again, you can see that everything pretty much would have been hook and eye fastening, because zippers didn't really come around. Although zippers were kind of nearly invented around this time, about 1905, something like that. Everything at the time just would have been sort of zippered. And again, I think you can see just very early stitching. What's another kind of geek moment is that the earlier the stitching, usually you can see that it's very super fine. So all the really early stitching was a super fine needle weight, and again, just really gorgeous. It's sad that purple looks really cool because this bit looks really blurred out, but when you look deep down, You see that incredible pink. So again, another example of how these colours just really don't last, which is a shame. This is a nice little colour. This is really interesting. So this would have been women's wear, probably kind of almost perhaps hunting or something in a more less social setting, should we say. And again, you've got this these really gorgeous blues and greens from this plaid. It's really, really stunning. Probably even might even be Bavarian. It might be German because it does seem to be a lot of Bavarian features with this amazing braiding down there and this incredible tapestry work here. That's really stunning. There's another couple of really beautiful bits that I want to show you. And this one is when we talk about how modest everything was. So this is something that we found quite recently. That's one of the latest additions to our archive, which is a piece of nightwear. The likelihood is that this could even have gone underneath a corset to kind of stop the pain, but it's amazing. So you've got these really beautiful buttons, front to back, and it's made of this incredible, look at that silk, oh, it's so light. But it's really interesting because it goes all the way down to the ankle. And again, kind of mirroring that kind of modesty of the decade, along with this gorgeous little pockets. So this probably would have been a nightgown, I think. But just really, really beautiful. This is the last thing I want to show you, and this is stunning. The work in this, I think it's probably earlier, but it's a really good example of what kind of like the shapes that would have existed at the time and the construction in terms of hand stitching. Oh, if it's Victorian, it's really early Victorian. It's amazing hand stitching, again boned to give that incredible tiny waist, ready for a huge skirt. So basically the skirt would kind of put here. What's really interesting, we don't have one here actually, it's a shame. I thought we might have one, but the bustle as well was really, really important. In Victoriana, you see it sometimes, you'll see this huge, there was a cage, almost a crinoline cage that came from the bum. It gave you a big bum underneath all your petticoats. Again, just all about the foundations, really underpinning. And it was something that Dior did when Dior did his kind of like late 40s new look that kind of flowed into the early 50s. That whole underpinning and shape was so kind of like early Victoriana. It's like tiny waist, really exaggerated hips, and again all about the underpinnings. All about they had to be worn with corsets. So yeah, you know, again, Victoriana had a real influence all the way through the years in fashion. I think that's all we've got. Thank you.